Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí en ZsONAMACO y en nuestra sala de conferencias donde gracias a Tequila 1800 presentamos el arte de coleccionar por segundo año consecutivo, que es una serie de conferencias que trata de reunir a destacados coleccionistas así como art advisors. Este año estamos muy contentos de tener aquí a Alex Hank y Ana Sokoloff. Alex Hank es artista y coleccionista y Ana Sokoloff es curadora y cofundadora de Sokoloff and Associates Art Advisors. Ellos nos van a presentar la charla, Work in Progress, Thinking and Acting on Collecting. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ustedes. We're going to speak in English today in honor of our foreign friends. So if you have any questions or someone that doesn't understand something, please let us know. We first want to thank Celica for inviting us to talk. And of course, ZsONAMACO, it's wonderful to be here again. And especially Tequila 1800 Cristalino for having us today and allowing us to have this conversation with Alex. For Alex, it's his first public appearance talking about collecting. And for me, it is the second appearance in ZsONAMACO, so I'm very happy to be back again. Thank you very much for your invitation. We want to start a little bit with who I am. Then I'm going to go into talking about who Alex is. And then we're going to talk about what he has been doing for the last years in terms of his collection. As they stated before, sorry. I understand that Tequila 1800 wants to show a video before we start talking, so an interruption. Thank you, Tequila Cuervo, again for having us and for showing us that presentation. And Alex, congratulations on your bottle. So going back to who we are and what we do, and talking about collecting, Sokoloff and Associates, which is an art advisory firm, was founded in the year 10 years ago. And it was founded by me, and the idea was to bring into the realm of the private collectors the knowledge that I had acquired from the art market, having worked with Christie's for many years, and also, and most importantly, to make the collectors' goals our own and to accompany the people that we work with in creating their dreams. And that is what we have been trying to do with Alex for the last couple of years. Collections are a reflection of the personality of the collector, a biography. And as such, in this conference, we're going to talk about Alex as an artist first, second as a collector, his goals as a collector, and we're going to try and break it into the beginning, today, and looking into the future. So the first question, Alex, is when and how did you decide to become an artist?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Anna. With her here, it feels like I don't need to talk at all. And with that video, I got a little bit thirsty. So we'll do it fast, and we'll show you a lot of slides and make it as fun as possible. But, we're going to talk more about the collection this time around, but I think it is a little bit important just to mention that as an artist, I've been working for about almost 20 years at this point, and it's a very interesting mix, because being an artist and a collector at the same time gives you, I think, a little bit of a sensibility that usually doesn't necessarily is present for collectors. So I've been doing this for about 20 years, and slowly it started transitioning into collecting, and I'm not going to stop being an artist. That's still going on, but yeah, So
let's move a little bit forward and tell us on what prompted you to collect and what type of work did you start collecting?
Well, I've been trying to collect for a long time, for probably about 15 years. And when I started collecting, it was a very different, let's put it this way, the budget was very different as well. So, but I always had huge inspirations that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I started with more photography, younger artists. By the way, you can interrupt us at any time with the slideshow. That's my mom right now. So it was more younger artists, photographers. There's a lot of photography-based was how it started, and then slowly it started growing. I'm getting a little okay. So these are pieces that have been in the collection for over 15, 20 years, something like that, and they're still kind of very present in the collection. And let's move on to the next.
Well, we were going to talk about who has inspired you in terms of artists, or you can also tell us about the other inspirations, like places or situations that you've experienced throughout your life that have.
So when I first started considering collecting more seriously, I grew up with my mom and my dad always loved art, and it was a very different time back then when I remember you used to get these massive packages from the auction houses in Mexico, and that was pretty much all the access we had in Mexico at the time in the early 80s to contemporary art and also to modern art as well. And I kind of grew up watching my parents starting to collect and visiting different places, and it really became kind of a huge dream of mine to be able to one day accomplish something of that significance. No? And we're gonna show you just a couple of the places that really have inspired both me and Anna to strive for something that really one day can become what we're looking for this collection to become one day. And the Louisiana Museum in Denmark, which is probably my favorite museum in the world, one of the most beautiful places and collections that exist. We're also showing you a little bit of the Margulies collection in Miami, which is it's actually one of the places that surprised me the most, because it's such a simple space and it's such an ambitious collection, which is kind of like completely the opposite of Louisiana, where it's like it's an architectural masterpiece in front of the ocean and the gardens. And the Margulies collection in Miami is more like it's like a warehouse that they just house with this incredible collection, as you can see. And of course, Jumex, no? Jumex for me came and changed Mexico completely and changed it forever, especially in contemporary, you know. And obviously Eugenio and the museum itself has been such an incredible, you know, goal to strive to, or not necessarily a goal, but he really is someone that in Mexico went for it, did it. I hope all of us, you know, have been there and visited it. We also have the bio there, which is like, you know, going also very, very big, but I mean, I'm showing you these slides because it's really places that have inspired me throughout the years, and finally, like the Broad in LA, which just opened a couple of months ago, which, again, it's a, you know, it's a culmination of a dream, of a lifetime dream for Mr. and Mrs. Broad to actually accomplish this, and they did it. Now, so why I'm showing you this is, I'm not saying that I'm going to build a Broad museum in Mexico, but I am saying that this is. When I started collecting more seriously, this is something that you really strive for, you know? And this is something that will hopefully one day, whether it's a museum, a foundation, whatever it is, it's something that these people have realized their lifelong dream, both Eugenio and the Broads, and they really accomplished it. So it's just kind of like a goal or a dream, or kind of like what I want you guys to know, how I started and how it's like slowly became and is becoming more and more serious at a time.
So we know where he began, we know where he's headed, kind of. Let's talk of where you are today.
All right.
So tell us how it started. I mean, we're starting to go into showing some works that are actually in the collection. And we will, from now on, we'll only show you works in the collection. But they're works that have also come from that conversation that you have had with both your parents, looking at auction catalogs and visiting museums, traveling abroad, and then being in New York, actively participating in visiting galleries, going to museums, learning about artists, meeting people. So tell us how you feel about your collecting practice today.
Well, we're gonna. I think it's great to follow the slides a little bit, and that way, we're showing you the first couple of slides that we're showing you. To me, are more like. I always thought that if I built a solid enough foundation in the collection of artists and pieces that I truly admire more probably than any you know other group of artists. I thought that once you have that foundation and once you have something that I respect so much in the collection, then you can start building from there. You can go up anywhere you want, as long as these you know following pieces or following artists, they kind of hold everything together. It's really interesting, and you'll see you're going to see like the first few slides, and then somehow the rest of the collection actually makes. You know, talks to these pieces. So like we have the sandbag here from '69, which is, you know, if not one of the most, for me it was very ambitious, because sandbag is so minimal, and so sometimes it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around owning a piece like this. And when we finally found it, which was kind of recently, less than a year ago, it was a lot of fun. And this piece in particular, it's from 1969, and it had belonged to Marian Goodman since this piece was made in '69, and it's only been shown once at MoMA in New York, and the second time she showed it, I think it was for one of the anniversaries of the gallery.
For the David, and also with David Zwirner when they did the Sandbag show.
That's right.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so it's the first time it's ever left her collection, and it's wonderful to have it, and it's you know it's something very special to us, no?
And I love it because Sandbag has been one of the artists that I've always admired tremendously. And at the beginning, I would speak to Alex about Sandbag, and he would say, yes, but not yet, yes, but maybe, yes, yes, yes. And then one day, I get a message from him, and you know, with the image of a sandbag, and I almost fainted. And I have to tell you that that's one of the wonderful things about our conversation is that I try to, in some cases, many times Alex introduces me to some artists, but in some cases I manage to introduce him to some artists. And we manage to look at the pieces, and the pieces come together. And I love the way that Alex responds to them. We're going to move on to the next slide, because this one also has a great story.
Yeah, well, this we're not going to talk about each piece like this from every side, but the first couple of ones is like, this is, to me, it was always like, the color charts by Richter, they're so very particular, and I think this is the way he responded to minimalism back in the 60s, and when I first saw this piece, I almost thought like it was going to be almost impossible to have access to a Richter, and especially that color chart, and it has also wonderful provenance. This piece, it's very interesting. This piece used to belong to Damien Hirst, and he basically, it's probably something that you guys can see very, very clearly, and I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but he bases his dot paintings that are kind of similar, except he went round instead of the squares that Richter did, and it's a very special piece, a very probably one of the most like what I was saying about the foundations of the collection. I think every single thing that we collect, at least me, I base it on this guy. Like if it stands next to it and it holds its own, then it can move on to the collection.
We're going to move on to one of the other slides, which again is one of the pillars. And I particularly love this one because it has such an art historical meaning going back to the early 20th century and to abstraction, which is probably what I personally like the most.
This is, it's also a very recent piece, and like I said many times, this is a...
It's not a recent piece, it's a recent purchase.
Sorry, recent purchase. It's a 69 Tatlin, no? But let's move on to the next one, because I want you to talk about that for a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. So this piece is a Richard Serra, and it is actually, let me look at my notes because I want to talk about it correctly. But it's a very early piece of the pieces that he does on equality. And it was actually one of the first pieces that he did in this type of version of putting the pieces in, and even though the size is not exactly the same, they look the same, and they are totally corresponding to the space in which they're located and into the way that the viewer walks around them. And this particular piece has also an interesting story because not only was it one of the first, but also it was exhibited alone in a Leo Castelli show in New York when he was still represented by Leo Castelli, and he was going to have a big show, but by the time that the piece went into the space and it got installed, Leo turned around and said, "This is it."
Yeah. This is actually the first piece that Serra made in steel, and it's from 1973, and it's when he returned from Italy, and it was his first show coming back to New York. So it's it's a very strange piece, and it's also very one of the very few Serras that you can live with indoors, and it's they're very heavy and very there's sometimes, and especially when people visit the house and they see it, it's a little bit confusing, and a lot of people trip on it, and they're all each of these they weigh 250 pounds. So we always say people leave with a little blood on their shin, and the Serra always wins with when they see it. But let's move on to the next one.
Well, I mean, there are some artists that we cannot stop thinking about as we look at the 20th century masters, and Giacometti being one of them. But this one again has a very interesting story because when this happened, we were not thinking about purchasing a Giacometti, and there are several people in this room that were participating in this decision. But it's also an interesting piece because it's a doctor that Giacometti had a wonderful and complicated relationship with. So again, it's not just one of the abstract figures, but something that has a tremendous amount of meaning within Giacometti's life and now within our life.
I think it's interesting, especially in these pieces. The first one that we're showing you, they have, as I hear you speaking, most of these have these sometimes interesting, sometimes strange stories, and I think in a way it attracts me even more to the pieces. This guy in particular, he was Giacometti's doctor, and he was diagnosed with cancer, I believe Giacometti was, and the doctor never told him, because back in that time it was something that in medical practice they didn't necessarily do. And then when Giacometti found out that he was with cancer, he vowed never to speak to him again. And less than a year after that, the doctor actually died. And Giacometti publicly said that he was glad that he had passed before he did. And it was very strange. And when we bought this piece with Lulu, and we heard the story, and then it just became kind of like darker and stranger, and it's not necessarily
Talking about darker and stranger, I'm interrupting you because in one of in thinking about Alex's collection, we have managed to coin certain adjectives that define it. And I'm going to read them out loud, and I want you to reflect upon them, not only, and also in the audience that we have lots of friends, maybe they have comments as well, but I want you to reflect on them. And for us, there are sensuality, masculinity, poetics, disturbing, nostalgic, humor, emotion, historic in their own world, stoicism, and elegance.
We'll take that. That sounds good. So
okay, so moving on elegance, for example.
Well, I have this is this McCracken. I've been very in love with McCracken for almost more than a decade, and I have a particularly interesting story that has to do with Mako. When I think it was 5 years ago, I think I saw I saw McCracken that I thought I could finally acquire for the collection, and it was with David Serner, and it was one of the first years that they were here, and so we negotiated back and forth for about 4 or 5 days, and going out every night after that, and then trying to find the right price for it. Finally, on Saturday night, I got a response from the gallery where they had accepted my last offer, or I think more than that, it was a price that we had agreed on. And the next morning, I woke up very early and I flew back to New York. And that day when I landed, McCracken passed away that day. And unfortunately, we weren't able to close on that piece because the estate was frozen. As soon as I landed, I found out. So we couldn't get the McCracken, and it took us about 4 more years to be able to find an actual piece again. So this piece is probably the most significant piece for me personally in the collection, and you'll see another piece from McCracken that we just, there it is. One more?
I know. There it is.
So that was about 2.5, I think it was in Mako 3 years ago, and it's been in collection for about 2.5 years, because it took us a little bit of time to be able to get it. But I always had this idea that having a steel McCracken was great, and I really love it. But to be able to find, the whole story has now been spanning about 6 or 7 years. We finally found these 2 other pieces. These are from '98. And this is the only diptych that McCracken ever did in his works. And it's really interesting because he always thought that, I don't know if you've seen the rooms where he has several pieces in the same room, but he never did it in different colors. So we're very happy to have this new piece coming. And I think McCracken, being one of my favorite artists and also one of the strong pillars of the collection, it's great to have these. So in Mako, it was my first time, even though it didn't happen, but it was a great memory for that.
There's another Sarah in the collection, which is quite amazing, this paper from the 80s, but it also has a wonderful story behind.
Well, yeah. This is this Sarah, I think, is one of the largest he ever did, and it was we were going to talk a little bit, during the talk. I wanted there's a side to collecting that's very interesting and that people don't really know about it so much until you start collecting, which is that there's a huge commitment to it, and it's sometimes a nightmare to collect these things. And we're going to talk about. Let me tell them about the Sarah real quick, and then we'll go into the Pierre Week.
Yeah.
But
that's a nightmare. It's to illustrate the nightmares.
And it's interesting, and they're not just anecdotes, because once you really start doing this, you realize that it can get very stressful, and it's very time consuming, and it really becomes a profession. And that's when, of course, Ana is a huge help, in your team as well. And so for this particular piece, we also, when we acquired it, it was also because of Lulu. But we didn't really realize what a big pain it was going to be. So what I'm trying to say, it didn't fit. We couldn't bring it into the house in New York. So what happened was we had to ask permission to the city to close the street, to take out the window, to put on a crane. We had to build a fake window in a warehouse to see if the actual crate would fit through the window. And finally, in the middle of the night, we had to get approval from the building to let us do that and take the windows out and the crane. And finally, in the middle of the night, 5.5 months after we bought it, it was finally, it finally came in. And I mean, it's wonderful, and it's such a big piece and such a major work on paper. I think it's from 1986. It's called Alameda Street, no?
Yes, and also talking about this and how the headaches that it brought and the pleasure that it brings. Also, it's important that you don't like to have anything in storage.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think that's very important to do, for the future of the collection and the foundation. But yeah, so we try to not have that much stuff in storage.
So we can go back to this installation?
Sure. Yes. Just to talk a little bit about what happened with the Sarah in the window.
That gave us courage to continue doing it and craning things all over the place.
Why don't we show them the photo of the aquarium?
Okay.
Or no, because we're going to show everything. There we go.
Aquí está.
So this is another piece that it's also one of my favorite, and it's also, like I was saying, this once you start with these types of pieces and these types of works, it's the commitment becomes kind of crazy. So this is an aquarium by Pierre Weig, and we bought it in Europe last year, and we had to transport it from Europe to California. What that means, it's all kind of fun and games until you really start doing it, no? And it was a 5-day situation, an installation where we had to crane 3 different crates, which one is so this is a rock that is it floats on the water. It's called a basalt rock, and it's kind of like a volcanic stone, but it weighs 750 pounds, so about 400 kilos, something like that. So we had to crane everything from the street over the house, cover the part of the house in the back. Then day 5 was finally where the water was in, and then you have to bring in these crabs that Pierre chose to, they live together. And so it's 2 types of crabs and 1 type of anemone. That these animals have existed on Earth for, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but once it finally worked, the crabs started eating each other. So they get in these fights and they rip each other's legs out, and I was like, what the hell is happening? And we have to. So imagine, after it looks beautiful and it's an incredible piece, but you have to feed the crabs, you have to replace the crabs, you have to clean the water, you have to. So it's kind of wonderful, but this piece in particular really, like, it reminds me a lot on how serious this can get after.
And also, and it's also kind of a reflection of the suffering that we go through. In some cases, we joke around this piece, saying that our life as collectors is an ecosystem as delicate as the one that we have to maintain for the aquarium to survive and stay perfect.
In Mexico, we were saying that it's el amor al arte, no? And this is really like a great example of it, because sometimes I think you have to be a little crazy to have something like this, but it's wonderful, and you can show them the, if you want the photos of the crane bringing the aquarium in.
That's the aquarium, and then this is rolling it into the house.
So I think we're going to go into just showing you a lot of the different stuff that's in the collection, and we'll talk briefly about some of them if you want. But do you want to ask them to do the numbers?
Yeah, we thought last night at dinner with some of the people that are present here, I was told, sadly, a conference that I missed by Ryan Gander, who had so many slides, and in order not to make it boring, he actually asked the audience to pick a number. And then he would sort of scroll down to that slide, and then he would talk about that work. So we thought that it was a very bright idea to involve you even earlier than we were hoping to, and not wait until the question session to have your comments and your picking about what you want to talk. So we are actually on slide number, I don't see the numbers here, but let's call this one 1 and move from here on forward. So Klaus, number 7, please. 1.
So we're just going to scroll 7.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, that's a good one, Klaus. So this is the installation of the Dwayne Valentine. This piece is from 1969, and he kept it in his studio in California, I think, all this time for about 40 years, and finally he was able to do a show with most of his early works in New York. And again, we had to ship it from New York to LA, and it looks so beautiful. You'll see it in this slide. So it looks very ethereal and almost like fragile, and the truth of the matter, it weighs three-quarters of a ton. And it took us 7 hours and a group of it was like 14 guys to push it just from the front door to where it stands there. And on that note, we'll show you another Valentine that I think this one is 1970.
This one's 73,
I think, yeah.
Wait, who has better eyes? ¿Qué año dice? 75.
Okay, so we'll move on to another
Okay,
slide.
next number. I'm super dyslexic, so let me go back to 7 so that I can keep count of where we are. 14, thank you. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Well, we saw that
We
one.
talked about this
So
one. You can pick another number. Next.
Let's go back to that one. This is Daniel Buran.
We lost the signal.
Oh, we did?
Wait, it's back.
Yeah. Daniel is such an interesting artist, and we're going to talk a little bit about him in the end of the conversation about works that we're working on with him as a foundation already. But so this piece it's very special to me just because I respect that artist so much, and I think in a way you can start seeing a little bit of how these kind of very elegant older artists are a huge part of my collection, a huge part of how I like to. I would guess like this piece would also be one of the foundations of the whole collection in itself.
Yes.
So we'll move on.
Next number. Sorry. 2. Okay. Entonces 7 era esta. Entonces 6, 5, 4.
Let's talk about the Bora month.
Bueno. Okay, let's talk about the Bora months. Sorry, Barbara.
I just keep looking at them here. But you want to talk about him for a little bit as a painter?
Sure. We skipped a little bit fast forward about Alex being an artist. And one of the important things is that Alex works a lot with painting and with photography. So I think that if you start looking at his collection in depth, you will find that there's a lot of painting and a lot of photography. But in looking at painting, Alex is also a portrait painter in many cases. So the idea of managing to capture the quality of the feeling or the character of the person is one of the things that I find that in Alex's portraiture that is quite compelling. And in the conversations that we've had about his art, we also look and talk about other great painters of the 20th century and contemporary. And I tend to believe that Borremans is probably one of the great masters. And he is not like Alex, approaching the subject frontally, but he always has this sort of mysterious approach to the character where there's not this confrontation between the spectator and the viewer. And in this case in particular, of course, the subject of the painting is looking down at an unfinished type of object that can be interpreted as anything. Some people interpret it as a box, other people interpret it as a book. But when you get close to these paintings, you see not only the capability of the artist to capture the character of the sitter, but as well the masterly in the gesture, which is also a great part and very important part of painting altogether.
I think in Borremans, I'm especially in the past couple of years, the collection has really started to look for painters and not necessarily, we have, as you saw earlier, there's a lot of sculpture in the collection, but I hold a huge fascination with painters because I think sometimes you feel like it's kind of like a dying medium, but at the same time, it will never really go away. It's something that, humanity will always have it present. No? So I think it's very hard sometimes to be a successful painter nowadays. It's not that easy, and these the artists that we're going to show you are not necessarily older artists, and I think they really become great masters in what they do. And I think it's a huge thing to stick to your guns and really go for it as a painter nowadays. And there's a few of them that I personally really like and really respect, and they've become a key part in the collection and a key when I first started, it was, as I showed you, the McCracken and, Dwayne Valentine's and even the Jenny Holzers that we're going to see. But these guys, to me, hold I have so much respect for them. And especially lately, we've been trying to really hold on to these painters. Let's show them the Marlene.
That's what I thought.
This is Marlene Dumas, which is also one of my favorite artists, and it's not only hard to find them, but it's also interesting to live with them. No, Borremans and Marlene and the second Borremans, they're kind of hard pieces. No, they're kind of you're not quite sure why they're considered such important art, like important works. But once you get it and you really I've had the pleasure of meeting Marlene very briefly, and you can see their person and Borremans as well. We had a chance to spend an evening with him, and you really understand these artists are kind of old school, and they really are immersed in their work and their passion for the painting, and there's no way around it. No, when you see these pieces and these artists, they grab the brush and they paint it, and they go to their studios every day. And I mean, I as an artist recently switched a couple of years from photography to oil, and I know what it is. No? So there's a huge fascination for them, and I hope the collection really starts going in that direction even more. We can show them the Rauch as well.
Yes. Another thing that I find interesting when we're looking at painting in Alex's collection and with regard to his own body of work is the fact that...
Well, we can stop at Toba as well.
That there are not in this would not illustrate my point, but we can stop there. But it's the fact that Rauch, Borremans and Marlene Dumas are very fast painters. They can't make mistakes because of the type of the gesture that they use and the way that they work with the oil. So and I think that's something that happens with your work as well. You're also a very fast painter, and you cannot make mistakes.
And Toba is completely the opposite.
Is the opposite.
So this is
so
Toba Kadori, and This exhibit is happening right now in Reagan Projects in LA, and Sean hadn't had a show with her in 10 years. So she's a very sweet, kind of almost when I met her, I feel like she was almost like a very delicate, almost like a little bird that she speaks very quietly. And so this painting, to me, it was when I told Anna that I was interested in this, she laughed at me and was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, and so she takes her time with these, and this is an oil that she just recently, I think she had finished like 2 weeks before the show finally happened. But anyway, this is also one of the painters that...
But I want a disclaimer, sorry. I said what are you talking about, but not because I don't believe in her work.
No, of course
disclaimer.
not. No, completely the opposite. No, and I'm sorry we're switching back and forth, but as the conversation is going, like if we could go to the Rauch, which is where we were going.
Okay, so we were going to the Rauch.
There it is. Talking about painting and in the collection, this to me is like the, it's a huge painting, and it's ¿No se ve?
Ya.
Yeah.
No siguen. Okay, ya.
This artist speaks to itself, and it's one of the, I hang out with a lot of people that are not in the arts, and I think that is also one of the great things about how the collection works. Because sometimes when, especially like in a week like this, we're all completely into it, and sometimes you even forget that other worlds exist, and so I mention that because this piece and with this artist in particular, when I told my brother about it and my sister-in-law, and I said, listen, I bought this piece, and I said, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a slideshow because you're not going to get it at first. It's a little bit of a strange artist. He's like, they had never heard of him, and so I showed them, and then a little bit about his work, and then finally I showed them the painting, and they were like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, this is a really hard one. And the next morning, my sister-in-law called me. She said, I had nightmares about the Rauch. Like, I can't believe it. And then they finally came and saw it in person, and they said, my sister-in-law, they stayed at the house for a couple of days when they had just arrived, and when they left, they said, you know what, if we stayed 2 more days, I think I would almost start liking this thing. But it's a very ambitious, incredibly ambitious artist, no? And I mean, he's, to me, is probably one of the most, respected or good painters alive, no? And I think what's interesting here is like the next one, the cats. This is a very old piece in the collection. I've had it since I was, maybe 18, 19 years ago, something like that. So it did start with this incredible curiosity about painting, which has, it has found, painting in the collection has found its niche, and it's found it's slowly, well, not slowly, it's finding its strength, no? So it's not only, you'll see it goes in many different ways, the collection, but painting, I think, is like a respect that I have for this medium that will never go away. I hope, and I don't think it will. So where should we move on?
Where should we move on? I think we need a number. I think we need a number. Although we're going to use this one as number 1. So you can say negative or positive. So we can move back and forth. Anybody? 2. Positive? Okay. 1, 2.
This is an Ai Weiwei helmet made out of marble that is also from ZsONAMACO, so that's great. We can move on probably to the Jenny Holzer's, which Jenny to me is she's kind of one of those artists that since I was a kid, you knew she existed, you saw her work, you knew what it that it was. It was present. You kind of knew what she was, and then suddenly, when it was time, we decided to find something that was relevant and that was really talking to us. So when we found Absurdly Evil, obviously we had to try and get it. And I think it's interesting because I think this is from 81 or 83, something like that. 85. And this is one of those, the really like shitty little hardware stores, like signs, and maybe after, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, we were able to get a second Jenny, if you want to show them, which is a completely different piece, and this is like Jenny finding technology and really finding what she could do with it, and that's where I find her genius. Now her genius is her, what she has to say in her words, but then she has evolved to this incredible technological expert as well. And this is also wasn't a very easy install. And she really knows what she's doing. So when you compare something from 30, 40 years ago which is, it's kind of still the same impact and the same idea. And then you move on to the newer pieces, which it's kind of wonderful to be able to have different works of her, coexisting in the collection like that. We also have a little one in brass that I think this is from the, 85? 81. This Salika and I saw recently, and we both fell in love with it. And so she's also, together with Lawrence Weiner, there's a...
you want me to go back to that?
Yeah, of course. There's a certain fascination as well. Well, we can stop at motherfucker, of course, because that I'm trying to talk about the different words, the artists that use words and language to do that, and I love them, and I think Jenny and Lawrence and of course Jack are they're probably the masters at this with the words, and when I found motherfucker, it was really interesting because I was like, I have really nowhere to put it on, and I called Bob in New York and I said, there's only one place where I can put it, and I think it's over the bed, if it wraps around the bedroom. And he's like, please don't put the motherfucker on top of the bed. That's just something that we can't do. But it's a great piece, and it's massive. It's about 7.5 meters long, and complementing it with the Lawrence. Well, the Rocher as well.
Well, I think that what's interesting about this is that if you start looking at the slides the way that we have been looking at them, you realize that there's a very sort of minimal part to the collection that is very elegant. There's, of course, the presence of text and narrative, and very important text and narrative, because it comes from poets like Lawrence Weiner and Ed Ruscha to an extent, and then Jenny Holzer talking with very political content. And then at the same time you find the painting, which is very much related. So again, that kind of brings me back to the adjectives that I read earlier, which I'll read again later once we are finished so that you see them all together. We're having trouble where we want to stop.
This is very interesting because recently I've always had I've been a little hesitant to collect video work, and recently it's really begun, and I'm very excited about it. This is a video by John Bach named Three Sisters. And this is a particularly long one. I think this is like about 45 minutes, something like that. And it's kind of, for me, it was always a little bit hard to wrap my head around collecting video. This particular one is it's kind of fascinating. It's about three sisters that one of them, her daughter is murdered, and the three sisters go out to find the killer. And the whole movie takes place in this set that John created inside the gallery, but he filmed the video in Germany before that. So it turns out they get the killer and they kill him, and it turns out it wasn't him. It was they got the wrong guy, but it's kind of like a horror film. And the other one is The Human Mask by Pierre Huyghe, which is even more terrifying than the John Bach piece. And this video, I think, in all my life watching art, video pieces, I don't think anything has really impacted me as much as this one has. And they were showing it at the Met in New York, and we went there once after closing, and it was kind of dark and completely empty. And I saw this video, and it's this trained monkey that lives in. He was trained to serve tea in a tea house, and anyway, the video is about like a post-apocalyptic world where the only thing that survived was this monkey. But anyway, so these are the two videos that are in the collection so far, and I think it's a great start.
¿Qué más?
The Barneys.
No. Bueno, okay, so Alex tells me to talk about Matthew, but I think Matthew doesn't need an introduction. He's also an extraordinarily interesting artist that has always used the limit of his body as his medium to create his body of work. And in that respect, he's always pushing the limit. In this particular piece, he's pushing the limit, more sculptural and less using his body per se. In this case, he's using the limit of the bronze and how bronze reacts when it's being dipped into water. And again, when I say is an artist that is, I think that another thread in Alex's collection is that there's everybody and all the pieces are really pushing their own medium, their own expression to the limit.
This is another of the Barney pieces from this. It's his most recent exhibit, actually, and this is the work that was exhibited in LA. And this is an older Barney, which is it's called The Ballad of Max Jensen, and you can, I mean, it's a little smaller, but it's also based on video. We talked about Toba.
We talked about Toba. We talked about these a little bit. ¿Quieres hablar del?
Sure. I mean, the Robert Overby, which is also, I think, from the mid-'70s. This is a California guy that I personally find him very fascinating, and he's a little bit. He passed away, and when we found this piece, it kind of made perfect sense with the collection again, in the sense that it's a little disturbing and it's a little sexy and strange, but I think ultimately is an incredible artist that hopefully, I'll talk about this a little more later, but being from California and being so respected and so recognized there, as well as Dwayne Valentine, and so the collection is also taking a great interest in those kind of artists. I think we should just show the photographs a little bit and try to wrap it up.
Okay.
With some.
So okay.
I mean, we have this piece, which is St. Bart's by Damien Hirst, and the Mark Quinns. As photography goes, I think a great start to the collection was with some of these artists that we've had for over 15, 18 years, and these are Kathy Opie's, which is a set of the high school football players. This is like Nan Golden and Roe Etheridge is somebody that unfortunately I haven't met, but Max keeps telling me that he's going to introduce me to him. And actually, this piece was also came from ZsONAMACO about two years ago. And so it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of portraits in photography, and a lot of them are these women from Roe's editions, which are wonderful. I think talking about Max, we should talk about him for a little bit. I think you should take it with you. I know you like him so much, and this is one of the artists that I know very well because of you.
Well, thank you. Philippe Barreno, he's French, and he is, along with Pierre Huyghe, in my sense, one of the most important contemporary French artists, if not the most. And in this case, he is working with the idea of the marquee, which is something that is very common when you walk around the cities and everything. But basically, what they're trying to do, and what art history has tried to do for many years, is to try to blur the difference between art and ordinary and everyday life. And in this case, he is talking about the beauty of common lighting for, in many cases, also exhibiting artistic and performances, but in a very sort of common and popular and mediatic way, and bringing it up to a different level. And in this case, these also, in some cases, change in light, and they start dancing on their own. So they start having that sort of same function that they do as commercial marquees, but then brought into the art context, in which that ballad of the light becomes something that is much more poetic, and yet still diffuses the difference between art and life.
I think it's really interesting, especially when I see these pieces in one group like this. I think I'm very attracted to shiny things, because between the Jenny Holzers and the Barreno, and I want to show you the Mark Leckey. I think I'm a little bit intrigued as well. Like I was saying earlier about painting, well, technology is completely the opposite, no? What can artists do nowadays with technology instead of just, something like painting or sculpture, no? So with Philippe's work and Mark Leckey and Jenny Holzer, obviously, the Dan Flavin was, the pioneers of using technology. But, so we're gonna talk briefly about Tom, who's here, and I think it's one of the most beloved artists in the collection, and we've been collecting his work for just over a decade now. No? And
this was the first piece.
This is the first piece, and whenever I see his work, I've always find like this darkness and this beauty, of how he. I think it's the mystery of his work that really calls my attention the most. And we're going to show this piece again. I want Anna to briefly talk about this recent piece that I know she's very passionate about, and so am I, of course. But if you could just talk about that, I think it's a key,
I think this is amazing. This is photographs of public bathrooms in New York, and there were the public bathrooms that were used during cruising. And I think that maybe Tom can, if I'm misinterpreting your work, please correct me. But there are the cruising bathrooms, and I just find this very poetic and very extraordinary in the way that he is presenting a social issue that was so present in New York and worldwide through the representation of these interesting sort of civic public architecture that also has a great history in terms of how cities work on their urban development, and then just frontally, it's almost a portrait of a social condition, but through the beauty of architecture and the simplicity of the object per se. Tom, sounds good, thank you.
This is Daniel Turner, which is a young artist that we find both extremely interesting, and now we're moving to the Queer Archangel, and I think we should show just the remaining photographs, and then just talk about. This is Ryan McGinley and
Justin Baker. And I think that to start wrapping up a little bit, Alexa, who's a very good close friend of both Alex and I, she one day came to me and says, I really haven't really found how to coin Alex's collection. And then one day she came up to both of us and she said, it's a collection that is uncomfortable. And what we love about Alexa's comment is that it's uncomfortable in a very positive way, because it's a discomfort that is constantly challenging the spectator to look at the art and to read it from a different perspective. So Alex's sister-in-law and brother's response to the Neo Rauch is probably the best example of those many situations within the collection that are constantly challenging the spectator to look at art. And if you are an art historian or an artist, I think that that's also exactly what you want to do. You want to make the spectator uncomfortable enough so that they spend time with your work, look at it, and hopefully change their perspective on life and art.
So I wanted to say, sometimes I really question what it is to collect or why somebody actually collects, no? And I kind of sum it up in two parts. The first one is what Anna was saying briefly in the beginning. No, I guess collecting is, it is a portrait. It is a biography of the person that actually collects them, because at the end of the day, you collect whatever you like and whatever moves you. So that of course I think is very interesting. But what I think is even more, what makes sense to me even more when I visit collections, or in my collection in specific, it's the idea that because of these works that you're gathering, they coexist together. So that's what's really interesting about seeing a collection like this, or like Louisiana, or like Margulies, or any of these collections that are actually private collections, because the real treat is to be able to see them exist in the same collection themselves. Now, it's almost like you're visiting somebody's home, and you see the kind of taste that they have, and you see what it is that moves them and what catches their eye. So to me, that's by far the most important thing about building something like this is that all these artists and all these works are going to coexist, and they actually already coexist. And it's kind of like that to me is what intrigues me the most, no? And it becomes a little bit of the collection takes a life of its own, and hopefully it will continue to do so. And also, like, at the end of the day, and this is why I'm doing it personally, and a lot of people ask me why I'm actually building this collection, no? And I think to sum it all up, I think the ultimate purpose of this, I mean, in my opinion, my personal opinion, it starts with a very philanthropic side to it. No, at the end of the day, I wish and I hope that available to anybody that wants to see it and that can actually visit it, or whatever it may happen to it. I'm trying to amass, like, the dream is to amass a group of works and a group of artists to eventually be able to pass on or leave somewhere and become kind of relevant in wherever it ends up. No.
I think also one of the things that is interesting is that we tend to lock things into their own place very easily, and the way that Alex is looking at art and the art that he collects and the artists that he collects is that he's allowing for those pieces to have multiple dialogues within each other and within the space where they're located. And I think that is also key to the way that you're approaching all of these general ideas and subjects.
Because I think
to close the art rooms? Oh, yeah.
I think, if anybody has any questions, and if not, we can,
Close.
talk about it. But if anybody has, sure.
Klaus.
Hi, I think it could be interesting to hear a bit, maybe just shortly, you sort of tell about how you see ZsONAMACO as an art fair, you, Alex, as an artist and a collector, and you, Anna, as a sort of art professional. What do you see the role of the fair and the development of the fair as a sort of Mexican fair?
Absolutely, go ahead.
No. Well, as an art advisor, I think it's an extraordinary fair. It has grown to be a place where you find very, very good things, but then I also think that it has tremendously helped in educating a local public, more so than the international public. The international public travels everywhere, and actually I'm mistaken. Also very instrumental in educating the international public about what is Mexico and Mexican art, artistic practice. But I think that overall, the activities that are around Mexico City when ZsONAMACO comes, and the people that gather within this precinct, allows for growing and learning about and looking at art again from a different perspective, and allowing it to speak to each other, and for people to start forming their own taste and therefore eventually their own collections.
I mean, they were asking me about this earlier as I came into the talk, and I think ZsONAMACO has changed not only the art world but the whole country on the way we look at contemporary art. It's kind of, it's kind of incredible what it really has become the most important access that Mexico and the people who live here have, to contemporary art. I think it's his 15th year, 16th, 15th, and I mean, it's become such a powerful, such a strong fair. But as you were saying, it's not only what happens inside the fair, it's what happens in the whole city and in the whole country, because at the end of the day, there's galleries coming from the whole country that, I mean, there's incredible galleries coming from the whole world, but it's incredibly important to have, contemporary art galleries from Mexico to have this, this opportunity to, exhibit alongside the most important galleries in the world. So, I mean, for me, ZsONAMACO has become, something that completely changed the country, and I think it will continue to do so. I hope, one of the main reasons I told Celica that I wanted to do this talk is because I want people in Mexico to collect, and I want them to, get more interested in it and get more excited about it, and because I know there's, there's a means and there's a curiosity to do it, and I think it's time, to hopefully bring Mexico. I mean, Mexico has an incredible artist background, And to start opening it up to contemporary art, you know, on a global scale, like ZsONAMACO has done, is incredibly important. You know?
Any other questions?
I think,
Alex, thank you very much.
We're good. Thank you so much, Celica, again, and thank you, Anna,
Thank you.
for this.